So hello everyone, my name is Petra Dumbbell and I am here today to talk to you about academic writing. I work at Curtin Library and I'm one of the Learning Success Advisors in that team. Before we get into the actual content of the session, I would like to recognise and acknowledge all First Nations people of this place we call Australia, and recognise the many nations who've looked after this country for more than 60,000 years. I am very honoured and grateful for the privilege to learn and teach and live in Bulu, Perth, and I would like to pay my respects to elders past and present. So everyone, welcome to the session. So up on the screen there, you see what we're going to be talking about today. So it is an hour and a half long session. I try to teach this in an hour and it's very rushed, so that's why we have an hour and a half. We might not use all that time, but we see how we go, how many questions you have. I am happy for questions throughout the session at any time. You can unmute yourselves and just ask, or you can also use the chat. I have the chat in front of me, so I'll be looking at the chat as well. So anytime you have a question, please interrupt me. I would really like that. Every now and then, I'm also going to ask you a specific question, and I am going to I'm really hoping that you're going to contribute and participate, because it's a lot more enjoyable for me if you do that, and I believe you get a lot more out of the session if you do that. There's also a few activities, and if you're listening to the recording of this session, you can do those. You just stop the recording, do the activity, and then come back to the recording, so that should work for you also. Okay, so as you see there up on the screen, today we're talking about academic writing. So we're going to talk a bit about the structure of how you can structure a piece of writing now that you are at uni. We're going to talk about paragraphs and what they should look like. We're going to talk about integrating sources. So it's not just you expressing your opinion on something, but you're going to bring in other people and their views. We're going to talk about academic style. So what does it look like when you write at university? Is it really that different from other pieces of writing you might do in everyday life? And we're going to talk a little bit at the end about writing critically. And so up there on the screen, you see a screenshot actually of our uni skills page, and you have the link there as well. And if you give me a moment, I will also put the link in the chat. So uni skills is basically Curtin Library's online learning resource. Just putting the link into the chat now. Don't have a look at it straight away. I prefer if you stay with me. But after the session, if there was anything where you think, oh, Petra went through that way too quickly, or I just want to revise that bit, go to Uniskills. There's a huge amount of resources on academic writing, including citing, referencing, EndNote, all those kinds of things. So anything that you need more information on after the session today, go to Uniskills and have a good look around. So then let me get back to my slides. So let's talk about structure first. So if you are at uni, you're going to have lots of assessments, and so the way you should approach any assessment is firstly go to the assessment question and find out what you are supposed to do. So the structure and the academic writing I'm going to talk about today works for most assessments. So it doesn't matter if you're writing a report or an essay, reflective writing, lots of things you need to do at uni are going to require you to write. And so go to the unit outline, understand the assessment question and work out what you're supposed to do and how long the text needs to be that they're asking you to write. Then a good idea is to actually calculate how many paragraphs you will need using your word count. So usually if you say, okay, 10% for the introduction, whatever the bit at the beginning, 10% for the conclusion, and so the remaining 80% of your word count you should split across the paragraphs in the body of your work. And if you count roughly 250 to 400 words for each, so you could just go, 320 or something, just to get a very rough idea of how many paragraphs you can actually fit in. So if you do this first, you're going to do the math and you're going to work out, oh, actually I only need 3 paragraphs. So that's going to straight away tell you something about how much reading you're going to do, how many ideas you can fit into that piece of writing. So that's a very good first thing to do. You might work out you need 8 or 10 paragraphs. So then you realize, oh, I need quite a few ideas to be able to do this assessment and answer the question that your tutors have or your lecturers have given you to answer. And then you plan your content. So once you've worked out how many ideas should I put into my writing, that's when you start planning your content. Now, let me just look at my notes. Does anyone have a question about that? It's pretty straightforward. But if you have a question, put it in your chat. You can also unmute yourself. And if you have a question and you're still typing, that's okay as well. I'm just going to carry on, and if I see a question pop up, I'm going to answer it anyway. Okay, so usually the structure also, like I said before, you have an introduction and a conclusion. So the introduction usually you would use to set the scene. So you would basically tell the reader what this piece of text is about. And you might also already sort of give an overview of what's going to come next. Then you have the body of your text, which is the main arguments, the analysis, the evidence, whatever answers you're going to give to the question that is asked. You're going to have a conclusion that's going to summarize the whole thing again, and probably you're going to rewrite the central point you're trying to make, and you're going to tell the reader again why it is important. And at the end, of course, you have your reference list where you're going to use list all the sources you have used in your assessment or assignment. So that's still pretty basic stuff, I hope, that you can all agree with. So once you've basically worked out, in that body of your text, how many main ideas do you have or can you play with? How many do you need? You're going to start structuring your paragraphs. Now let's talk a bit about paragraphs. Can I ask all of you, what are the main elements of a good paragraph? Now, this is one of those questions. Yes, Jessica, did you want to answer the question, or do you have a different question?
I was going to answer the question. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Yes, thank you very much. That's great.
It would have your statement of what you want to present within that paragraph as a summary, sentence, sorry, as the first sentence of the paragraph.
Yes, that's very, very true. So yes, so sorry, I actually now missed your name, a lovely person who has just been talking to us. So yes, that was a perfect answer. So you start basically with the main point you're trying to make. And as Emily put in the chat there as well, sometimes we call it a topic sentence. So it's the main thing you want to say. So then there come a few other bits and pieces, and then Emily says then there comes the conclusion. Does anyone have other ideas of what the main elements of a good paragraph are?
Yes.
At the moment? Yes.
Toward the end, you sort of lead into the next, set context for the next paragraph.
Exactly. So towards the end, you're going to lead to the next paragraph. You're not going to leave your reader there. You're going to show them how this paragraph that they just read, how it links to the next one. Exactly. So we have also Deepu, I hope I'm saying your name correctly, who says main topic, introduction, supporting sentence, evidence and analysis, and example. Perfect. So look, I'm asking this question because there's quite a few different ways of how we can talk about, the sections of a paragraph. But one method, I guess, that's quite well known out there is called PEEL. So you have point, evidence, explanation, and link. So, I still don't know, was it Jess, the person who just put their hand up and who's just been talking? I don't know. Anyway, so like your lovely colleague said before, the point is basically the clear sentence that says what the paragraph is about. So you start straight away with saying, here's the thing I want to say. Then you move to evidence. The evidence is basically usually information from the readings, from the things you've read that support that point. So basically other people agree with you. Or you might also have evidence in data that you've collected, or you've spoken to someone, or you read something, whatever the evidence is. Then you might explain how that evidence supports your point. You know, I'm making this point, and then I say, well, these other people I've read, they say the same thing. And so then you might explain how that is a good thing. You know, they agree with you, essentially. And then, like your colleague said, at the end, you link the paragraph you've just written either back to your topic, to the question you're trying to answer, or to the next paragraph that comes afterwards. Now, what I would like to ask you next is, hang on, my PowerPoint slide is not moving. Yes, it is. Are all paragraphs structured like this? Can I just have a few yes, no in the chat, please? What do you think? Are all good paragraphs structured like this? Or should they be structured like this? So we have one no. What do all the others think? Do you think, yes, they should be structured like this, or do you think, no, not really? So we have one no, one yes, one yes. What do the other people think? There's 25 of you, so far it's a bit of a 50-50. So a few people said no, a few people say yes. Other people probably think, I don't know. Miriam says there would always be exceptions. Yes, that's true, Miriam. That's just a general rule of life, isn't it? There's always an exception to the rule. So he says APA structure seems different. That's a very good point. So you think no. Leslie says no. So I think the no's are maybe is it more no's than yeses? Anyway. Look, people, it's a bit of a trick question, the question that I put in there. So the answer is probably no. So how the Peel method works is if you have no problems with your writing, if you get good feedback in your writing, if people understand what you're writing, you're probably using something like Peel without even thinking about it too much. And if you're a good writer, then not all your paragraphs are going to be like this. They're not all going to have PEL structure. They might have a slightly different structure, and that's completely fine. When you should be using that PEL structure is if you get feedback on your writing, where your lecturer or the person marking your assessment, if they say your writing lacks clarity. People love saying that, and usually students think, I have no idea what that even means. And so usually what it means is your paragraphs are not structured enough. So you lose your reader somewhere in your sentences. And if that is the case, you can go to your paragraphs and have a good look. Is there one main point? You know, do I say straight away what this thing is about? Do I have evidence and explanation in there? Am I linking it to the next paragraph? So basically, you can check. And if a paragraph is written in that structure, it's generally a good paragraph that's easy to read. But there can also be other paragraphs that have a different structure that are also completely wonderful and make a lot of sense. So Zoe, you say APA structure seems slightly different. Sometimes you start with the evidence first or with the explanation first, and then you lead the reader towards the main point you're going to make. Sometimes you don't have a link, because if you say, I'm going to give you 3 reasons why dogs are awesome, and then the next 3 paragraph, I'm going to give you 1 reason why dogs are awesome, I don't really need to have that link, because it's very clear to the reader there's going to be 3 paragraphs, 3 reasons, and then the paragraph might start with the first reason is. So then I don't need that linking sentence at the end. So it depends a bit what you're writing, but use this structure if ever you think, I could make this clearer, or if you get feedback that your writing lacks clarity, that it should be clearer, that your arguments could be better, then you can use this to check. And if you use it to check, what is likely you're going to find is that you have more than one idea. So the point, you're basically trying to make 3 points in one paragraph, and that's why it gets confusing. Or you don't have any evidence or any explanation. You just say, I think dogs are great, but that's it. You don't have any evidence, you don't have any explanation, there's nothing else there. So that's not a very good paragraph, not a very good argument as well. So that's the structure of paragraphs. I can show you what that looks like. So I don't want any of you to read this entire paragraph. You can do that with the slides I'm going to send you afterwards. I just want to show you that often a paragraph does actually look like this. So you have, I don't know if I did that too quickly there, but basically you have a main point, that's the first sentence, you have some evidence, you can see there's a reference in there, so you've done some reading, so that's your evidence. Then you explain a bit, why this is important, and then you have a link. And so there are quite a few, like when you do your reading, you're going to come across quite a few of those paragraphs because they are very common. But as we said, they're not the only way of writing a good paragraph, but they are a very good way. So are there any questions about paragraphs? Because that's all I was going to say about paragraphs today. Did anyone want to ask a question about paragraphs?
Yes.
Yes,
So
please.
Do you mind quickly clarifying APA structure?
Look, so APA structure, I'm actually not familiar with APA structure for paragraphs. So APA, for those of you who might not know, it's a referencing system. So I think it's the American Psychological Association, APA. And depending what you're studying, you might use APA to reference. So it's a referencing style. I know that APA also has APA is a referencing style. APA also has, they go a bit beyond referencing. So I know they also have, say, formatting style where they tell you, here's how you should format a table, or here's how you should number a figure, that kind of thing, in a longer piece of text. I didn't know they have a paragraph structure, but look, my feeling would be that it's probably not completely different from the paragraph structure I just showed you. Student papers. So yes, there's an APA referencing class tomorrow. Okay, so first I'm going to get back to all of your questions here. First, Carl has their hand up. Did you want to ask a question? Yeah, we can't hear you, Carl, but that's okay. You can also use the chat if or maybe you've lowered your you put up your hand by mistake. So basically, there's, like Shane said in the chat there's a lot of different ways of how people try to explain a paragraph. So I wouldn't worry too much if you find a system somewhere that's uses different abbreviation, different letters. They're all fundamentally very similar. So usually it's make 1 point, some sort of systems call it one idea. So 1 point to one idea, usually you have some sort of explanation of what the idea means, you have evidence to back yourself up, and then you have a link to the next bit. The link might be, like I said, sort of implied. You might not have that sentence. So look, I don't think it's very useful to compare all those different systems. Just use one that you really like. And I think, was it Aisling who just spoke? Look, if the APA way of explaining paragraph, if you can understand it better, then please go and use it, because I'm not saying it's a wrong one. It's just different. It's just a different way of basically explaining the same thing. So I hope that answers your question. We also had then a question from Jennifer. Postgrad, do we need to give reference with every paragraph? Look, Jennifer, it depends on the paragraph. If you have a paragraph where it's just you writing, it's just your ideas, then you don't need any reference. As soon as you take in ideas from someone else, then you need to reference. So as soon as, say, in the paragraph on the screen there, in the middle there, you can see Gonzalez 2023. So obviously you've read this paper or book or whatever it was from that person, and they've said something, and you're taking their idea into your writing, which is why you have to reference. So I hope that makes sense. Thank you for the APA referencing class link, Heather. So it's beautiful. You've put in the link and everything. So this is an APA class. So if you know you're using APA, and many of you probably are, some of you might not, you can go to the class and find out about referencing in the APA style. The class is going to be only about referencing, not about paragraphs. I just need to warn you. And Carl, you typed it in the chat there. Should he indent the first sentence of the paragraph? Carl, I don't think so. I've seen it done sometimes. I think more often than not these days people don't do that. You just have a space between your paragraphs. So you have a paragraph, bit of space, next paragraph, but you wouldn't indent the first sentence. Though, look, if your unit outline asks for that, I would just format it the way your lectures want it to be formatted. But most people that I've seen write at universities these days, they don't do the first sentence intent anymore. Generally, Carl, I would say worry about formatting last. So, formatting is important. People should be able to read your writing. You should have a good font size, all that kind of stuff. And your unit outline might give you, might tell you exactly how to format your assessment, and you should. But really worry about the content, because usually that's where you get the marks. Formatting is just a couple of marks. And then, good, thank you. I was going to ask you if that's okay. And Deepu said there is an APA referencing guide. Yes, thank you. You're all really very wonderful in putting all the links in the chat that I was going to put in. So yes, there is also an APA referencing guide. So if you can't come to the session tomorrow, there is a guide. And the guide, as you can see from the link there, is on Uniskills. Uniskills is where all the things are. So that's the link I gave you at the beginning. So go there if you have any questions after the session. So are we all happy to move on from paragraphs? Or do you have more questions about paragraphs? If you do, then there's still time for you to type the question, and I can always come back to the paragraphs afterwards, or to your question afterwards. Okay, so we talked about the paragraphs. So first we talked about the structure. We said, do your look at your word count, do the math, work out how many ideas or paragraphs you're going to have. Then, think about your paragraphs, 1 point or 1 idea per paragraph. So then you sort of have a rough idea of how many paragraphs you're going to have, how many points you're going to make. And then what we need to think about, hang on, my slides are not moving. So then we need to think about how you're going to integrate sources. So basically, in most assessment, that's okay, Bhavati. I am recording the session, so you get the recording afterwards, so you can catch up in the first 30 minutes or so. So for most assessments, you will be asked to answer a certain question, and of course you need to answer the question. But because you're at university, it's not enough for you to say, I think this, or, I believe this, or I think this is the answer. Usually you have to do some reading. You have to read journal articles, books, chapters, whatever you can find. And you're going to have to integrate those ideas into your own writing. And referencing is linked to that because, of course, if you do that, then you need to reference those ideas because they're not yours. So there's a few ways you can integrate those sources into your writing. So can I have a few answers in the chat, please? How can you integrate sources into your writing? So you've done some reading, you found a few ideas out there that go with the ideas you want to integrate, you want to write about. And so Aisling says paraphrase. Yes, I like that. Do we have anything else? Any other way of how you can get those ideas into your writing? Direct quotation. Yes, I like that one too. Is there any other way? In-text citation. Yes. Writing our own words. Yes, that's a good one as well. So I'm going to show you my list. Synthesis, Bhavati. Thank you. That's wonderful. So paraphrasing, like Ashley says, and then you quote a credit. You write Shane, and Carl says use in-text references in brackets. Yes, that's correct as well. So look, there's a few different ways of how you can get those sources into your writing, and you have actually mentioned all of them in the chat, so that's lovely. So let's go through them, and look, don't worry too much about what they're all called. Just try to understand the differences. So we have paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is basically reading about someone else's ideas and you bring them into your own words. Jennifer, inserting tables and figures, I'll get back to you on that. So that's paraphrasing. Then we have something called synthesizing, which is, so you do your readings and you find, these 2, 3, or 4 authors or texts that you've read, they all agree that dogs are awesome. And so you're going to synthesize those and say, well, there's 4 people out there who agree with me that dogs are awesome, or dogs are better than cats, or whatever the question is you're trying to answer. So that's synthesizing, which is essentially the same as paraphrasing, but you combine 2 or 3 authors that you've read. Summarizing, you're going to do a lot of summarizing because you're going to read an entire book chapter and then you're going to, reduce whatever you've read into a shorter version. So it fits within your word count. And then, like some of you said in the chat there, quoting. Sometimes you are going to directly, like you copy and paste from the text you've been reading directly into your writing. So let me check the chat and all your questions there. So yes, so you exactly have said all the things I have just said. And then Jennifer, you said inserting tables and figures. You can, of course, but then usually if it's an entire table, you are probably more likely to summarize whatever's in the table. So say you do your reading, there's a table out there, the table tells you, 10 reasons why dogs are amazing, and then you might, in your own writing, just have the author. You just say, the person called Green has 10 reasons why dogs are amazing, and then you might just summarize those 10 reasons. You might not copy and paste the entire table into your writing. So let me know, Jennifer, if that makes sense to you. And then Carl says, so yes, I'm going to come back to you, Carl. That's wonderful, Jennifer. So Carl, I'm going to come back to your question in a moment. So can I just have a heads up that the 4 things that are currently on the screen, are you all with me, how they sort of work, how they are going to help you integrate ideas into your own writing? Or if not, let me know. Yeah, there's lots of yeses, so that's lovely. So if we say there's 4 different ways of how you can integrate those sources, which one of them is the best? Do we have, which one is the winning way of integrating sources? Or which one is the worst, actually, if you want to ask the question in a different way? Why are they all the same? Are some of them better than others? What do you think? So Leslie and Miriam said paraphrasing is best. Anyone else have any theories? Summarizing from Jennifer. Direct quote is not so good. That's very true, Leslie. They're all useful. I love that answer, Carl. They're all useful. Is there a formula ratio of best practice? That's a lovely question, Shane. So I have done this beautiful, beautiful. Ashling says quoting is the worst. Summarizing, paraphrasing is good. Deepa says paraphrasing is best and direct quoting is tricky. Yeah, that's a lovely answer as well. Look, you all said exactly the right thing, and my completely horrible sort of shape on the screen. What I was trying to do with that shape is trying to tell you you should paraphrase, synthesize, and summarize most, and you should quote directly very little. So in answer to your question, there's no ratio. I'm not going to give you a percentage, but you should paraphrase. Paraphrasing and synthesizing is sort of the same anyway, but for one or more different sources. In a way, when you paraphrase, you automatically summarize in some way, because you wouldn't, take the entire writing. You would just sort of take a summary of it and then use that to paraphrase. So the first three are very similar, and you would use them together. And direct quoting, you should do least of all, not very often. If possible, not at the beginning of your writing, at the beginning of a paragraph. And so the reason is that if you do direct quoting, you're letting someone else do the talking in your text. So it's not your idea, it's not even your words, it's their words, their writing, their way of saying things. So it's a bit like if you did a presentation and suddenly you're inviting a friend over and suddenly the friend starts talking, but it's your presentation. So that's not great. So this is your text, your writing, and so you should do the most of the writing. And then quoting, you do very little of. Now, like Carl said, I think Carl said they're all useful, and this is very important because sometimes a quote can be beautiful and can be just very useful. So usually quoting you would do if you read and you say an author has explained something in a way or said something in a way where you say, I couldn't have said it better. It's such a good example. It's so clear. It might be really funny. It might be humorous. It might be very precise. It might be very intelligent, whatever it is. If you say it's amazing, it's such a good sentence, I can't make that any better. Then you just use that quote, and it can be very, very good academic writing to have a direct quote. So like Carl said, all of them have a reason. So do the first three most often, and then quoting only do if there's a very good reason. Now, someone said, yes, I'm going to come back to your question, Babati, but someone said in the chat something about how many words. And so the words, when you do direct quoting, look, do as little as possible, because we said quoting can be great, but you shouldn't do it too often. You also shouldn't quote like an entire paragraph, copy and paste. That is not great. So quoting is as little, as small as possible is the bit you're going to take from the other text, for the same reasons that I've just said before. It's not your words. Sometimes in the longer piece of text, you might quote an entire paragraph, and then it depends on the referencing style you use. There's a rule of if it's more than 40 words, and you actually need to count the words, then the formatting becomes different. And in your text, you sort of make it narrow so the reader can see, oh, this is the entire paragraph is literally from someone else. So that's probably what, I can't remember who asked that question, but that's probably what you were thinking about in terms of the word count. But usually, as a rule of thumb, the quoting should be, as few words as possible. So very short, a sentence or two, but not very long at all, unless you have a very, very, very good reason to copy and paste an entire paragraph. So then also we have Babati's question. Do I still have to put the citation if you're synthesizing? Yes, absolutely. So for paraphrasing, synthesizing, summarizing, quoting, for all four of them, you have to put the citation, you have to reference, because it's not your idea. So basically, if, and this is a horrible example, I'm sorry, but we're going to stick with my example of why are dogs awesome, why are dogs better than cats, and apologies to all the cat lovers out there. But if I basically say, well, from my point of view, dogs are just so much better because, and I just keep talking about my own experience, my own opinion, I don't need to reference anyone because I'm just saying, well, I believe dogs are better. You know, that's the end of my story. But if I then start reading up on the topic and I find other people who've done research into this and they have, they might have interviewed people and they've come up with evidence saying, well, actually dogs just make people happier, or dogs are, I don't know, they kill fewer birds, and so they're just wonderful. And so those ideas are not my ideas. And so as soon as I say, dogs are wonderful, and I've read this other person who basically can prove they're better than cats because they kill fewer birds, that's not my idea. These other people have done the research. So as soon as I bring them into my text, I need to reference them. It doesn't matter how I bring them into my text. The only difference is if I'm quoting, I need a page number and quotation marks. If I'm paraphrasing, synthesizing, summarizing, I'll probably just have the author and the year. Does that make sense? Because that's a very important question. So should I sort of explain this in a different way, or are you all with me on Barbati's question there, which is a very good question? Makes sense? Okay. That's one person. How about all the rest? You can also give me a thumbs up if you'd like, if you don't want to type. There's another thumbs up. That's lovely. So Barbati, you need to, depends on the referencing style, but you usually put the page number for a direct quote, because the idea is that I should be able to go to the text you're quoting and I should be able to find exactly the sentence you're quoting. So you need to give them the page number. If it's more of an idea, you can still put the page number, but you don't necessarily have to. But that's more a referencing question, Bhavati, and that's, you know, when you go to the referencing workshops, they tell you exactly which details you need to put into those references. But usually author, year, and then page number. That's okay. Okay, there's a few thumbs up. So look, if you have a question or if things are not clear, then, you know, use the chat. But that's everything I was going to talk about. So that's sort of an overview of how you integrate the sources you read into your writing. Now let's have a closer look of how we do the different ways. So when you paraphrase, try to start your paraphrase with a different phrase or word from the original. You know, don't just, you know, start the sentence with the same words. Just use different words if you can. Explain or rewrite as though you're explaining the original to an audience. If you don't know how to paraphrase, then basically read whatever it is you're reading, take some notes, and then you basically close the book, close the laptop. You don't look at the text you've just read, and you imagine that a friend is in front of you, and you literally out loud say, you explain to the friend who's either there or not what you have just read. And as soon as you have explained what you've just read, you try to write it down. That's the best way of basically putting it into your own words. It also helps you with understanding. So just pretend you're explaining what you've just read to a good friend, and that's how you paraphrase, that's how you write. So usually you use your notes, so you read the thing, you write notes, you use your notes, you write a paragraph, and then you can go back to the original to make sure you know, the idea is still the same or whatever. So try not to paraphrase with having the original text just next to you, because then your brain is going to find it hard to come up with different words to say the same thing. So I hope that makes sense. Summarizing is very similar to paraphrasing. Obviously now it's a summary, so it's much shorter than whatever you've read. You're putting it into fewer words, and you can summarize an entire event, you know, World War II, an entire article, or just a part, or just one idea, or just one paragraph. Let me just get some water, sorry. So let's move on to an activity. So you have a sentence up there on the screen. Indigenous peoples should not be the focus of the tourism attractions per se, but rather tourism attractions or products should be based on the group's land and cultural identity and controlled from within the group. So I'm going to give you 4 or 5 minutes. Have a go at paraphrasing this sentence. So basically, this is what you've just read. So try to understand what it says and then try to come up with your own sentence or two where you paraphrase this idea up there on the screen. So I'm going to give you 4 or 5 minutes. You don't need to share what you're going to be writing with anyone, but I encourage you all to do this activity, and then we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how I would paraphrase it. Catherine, yes, you have a question?
Sorry, but I don't have your shared screen. I've just got you on camera.
Are you on a phone, Catherine?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, no, we've there was another person who had the same problem. I think on the phone you can't see my slides. So I don't know if the other person who had that problem, I don't know if they managed to sort it out, but I think that's probably depending on your phone.
Yes, Jess managed to sort out her problem. She logged in via her computer. If you're on an iPhone or a Samsung, it doesn't work when there's someone presenting.
Yeah.
So you can't see what's being presented when you're on a phone. So unfortunately, you have to log in via a computer or a desktop or something like that. Or like if you've got an iPad, then that should work.
Okay, I will log in on a computer a bit later then. Okay, thanks very much. Bye.
Sounds good. Thank you, Catherine. How are we going with the paraphrasing here? Oh, Babati, you put it in the chat. You don't have to put your sentence in the chat, but you can if you'd like to. So, yeah, that's a beautiful sentence, Babati. I really like your paraphrase. Yeah. No, you're going to see mine. So I hope everyone had enough time there to rephrase. Oh, there's another one from Samantha. Let me just quickly read that. So I can't sort of give you feedback on all your examples, but Babati, yours is beautiful. Samantha, yours, I can't really go into too much detail, but yours seems using a lot of the words that are already there, and you sort of swap them around a bit, which is not a problem as such, but just be mindful that it should be your own words. So you said it can be argued. Yes. So for the first one, for the first part of your sentence, you do, that's a copy and paste what is there. So that's not quite paraphrasing. The second part of your sentence is beautiful, and you also have the very beautiful reference there. So let me show you what I have. And look, there's no right or wrong here anyway. There's obviously different ways of doing this. So up there on the screen, you have a few different use curtains Grammarly as a tool. Yes, Mitch, I'm going to get back to you on that. So, and I'm going to get back to you as well, Deepu. So if you see up there on the screen, the different colors are meant to be the different like little bits or ideas that are in that sentence. So it's about the Indigenous peoples. They should not be the focus of those tourism attractions, but those tourism attractions should be based on that group's land and cultural identity, and the group should be able to control those tourism or attractions. So if I then take that into paraphrase, so see how basically the different bits are in there, so you can see that colored. So the idea that those groups should control those attractions is led by Indigenous peoples. So the word control has gone, we have Indigenous peoples there. It should be based on a group's land and cultural identity. It should focus on their culture and land. So you can see how, and then the word attractions has disappeared because tourism sort of includes those attractions, that those attractions are sort of, it's like a subheading of tourism anyway. But then let me just have a look at your other pieces in the chat, because that's like what you have up there on the screen is obviously just my way of doing it, but there's lots of other ways that are completely wonderful as well. So let me read what's there. Yeah, yours, Tipo, is beautiful. Yeah. Very, 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 very good paraphrase. And Leslie. Yes, Leslie, yours is very beautiful as well, but yours is sort of, which is very useful, is like a summary and a paraphrase at the same time, because as you can see, yours is a lot shorter, and you don't have the cultural identity and control piece in your sentence, which is not a problem, but I'm just saying that's the bit that's missing from yours, which is why your sentence is shorter, but it's still a very good sort of summarizing and paraphrasing at the same time kind of thing. So are there any questions about paraphrasing? Are you all sort of happy with how that usually works? So Mitch, actually you said you use curtain Grammarly. You really shouldn't use Grammarly to paraphrase. That is not a very good idea, Mitch. So those of you, yes, that's what Shane just I think summarized what I just said. So Mitch, using any tool to paraphrase for you is basically goes against academic integrity. And so you really shouldn't do that. Paraphrasing really needs to be done by you. If you use Grammarly, the curtain version of Grammarly, which you're allowed to use, it doesn't do that for you. It doesn't paraphrase for you. So yeah, not a good idea. Paraphrasing needs to be you, because it needs to be your words. So, if you use ChatGPT to paraphrase, that is just cheating. So please don't. Deepu says, you have a problem with word count in all my assessments. Is there a way I can minimize the word count? Deepu, yes, you just need to edit, and you can turn it into a game. You get a point for each word you delete. And if you get, 50 words, you're allowed to eat some chocolates or walk your dog or whatever gives you joy. So editing would be a very good one for you, Deepu. And also you can't use a tool to shorten your assessments. It's not a good idea. Shane says AI misses the meaning, exactly. And Carl says, oh good, thank you, Carl. Okay, so look, if that's okay, let's move on from paraphrasing. Let's talk about how to synthesize. So you remember synthesizing, we said, is a bit like paraphrasing, but you're doing it with more than one source. So you've read, 4, 5, 20, however many things you have read for your assessment. And so now you want to combine all those notes, those paraphrases you have some summaries, you have some quotes. So use ideas from more than one text. And what you need to do, and it might seem very chaotic at first, because I guess it sort of is. Sorry, so you have a look at all those ideas and you need to group them together somehow, because synthesizing is not just a list of what people say. So you can't say author A has this idea, author B has this idea, author C has this idea. That's not synthesizing at all. That's just a list of what people said. So to synthesize, you need to get those ideas together. And how you do that is you group them somehow. So depending on your assessment, that can look quite differently. So you can do positive or negative. That's a very standard one. Your assessment question is, are dogs better than cats as pets? And then you have, positive and negatives for the cats and for the dogs, and you group it like that. You could have old and new. So you could say, well, this is like historical. These are historical ideas, but, in the modern world, this is what we think. So you have two groups there. You could say different groups of people. So if any of you are in health sciences, you could say, well, this the sickness or whatever looks different in children and adults. And so you could have those groups, authors that write about adults and authors that write about children, and then you compare the two. So you somehow need to find a bit of a pattern, some groups in all those ideas. And I'm going to show you one example to do this, and it's important. So don't try to read all the text. That's not what the example is about. The example is about showing you how it can be done. And in the example, it's about positive and negative, but keep in mind that the groups that you need to find can be different. It's not always going to be positive or negative. Because, for example, you could just have your question could be basically argue that dogs are the better pets. And then basically the grouping might be different people who say, well, dogs are better pets than cats because they don't eat birds. And that's one group. And then you find different authors who say, yeah, that's actually true. They don't eat as many birds, and that's one group. So I hope that makes sense. So this is what it's going to look like. So you have, you've read these 4 different authors. They all say different things about AI tools. And you have those different ideas from those people. In our example, we're going to group them into positive and negative. Some people say, oh, this is really, it's really bad to rely on AI. All sorts of bad things are going to happen. The other people say, AI is awesome. It can sort of be just wonderful in teaching. So you sort of have a table, and you can imagine how that goes on a bit. Then you need to link those ideas together. So you basically say contrasting. So that group says this, but the other group says this, or summarizing, endorsing. So you sort of use words to link those ideas together. I'm going to come back to that later. And then you do the synthesizing. So you basically see in your text there, you have the pink idea first, which is a positive idea. And then you say, and therefore, so you link the two together, you have the yellow idea from those 2 authors. Then you say, however, so that's how you link the positive to the negative. You say, however, and then you have the so Duquois idea, and you say, furthermore, because actually the green idea is like basically the same thing again. You say that, furthermore, there's this other person, Lee, who also agrees with the idea. So that's what it looks like in practice. I'm just going to go back a slide, because up there on the slide for those words, I have as a tip use Manchester University Academic Phrase Bank, and just give me a moment. I will put the link to that into the chat. This is it's Manchester University Academic Phrase Bank, and don't have a look at it straight away. And hang on, Michelle, I'm going to get back to you soon. So the Phrase Bank is something that is completely wonderful. And I encourage you all after the session to really have a good look and start using it. The Phrase Bank basically gives you words to use in academic writing. So it tells you if you want to disagree with an author, here's the words you use. If you want to say those three authors say the same thing, here's some words to use. And so it's not plagiarism. Hang on, I'm going to come back to you here. It's not plagiarism because it's just in the beginnings of sentences and just a few words and phrases, but it basically is going to make it a lot easier for you to write. So I encourage you all to check that out. Now, Michelle had a question. Is that the proper way to do the referencing in APA 7, or would you do each citation after the sentence? No, that's completely fine. I mean, and yes, that's APA, so I don't quite know what you mean after, after the sentence, the Lee quotation maybe. Look, you could also have furthermore, Lee argues that, and then you could have the citation at the end. But the thing is, if you do that, you have the word Lee twice, and that's a bit, it's just too many words in a way. So that's why you can do it like that as well, Michelle. So what's up there on the screen is definitely according to APA, but also, you know, writing is more art than science, and so is referencing. So you could definitely reference this differently, and it will still comply with APA. So I hope that answers your question. But you know, go to the APA session tomorrow if you want to really dive into those details. And then Carl said, can you gather too much reference material? How many articles, for example, would be ideal that cover the topic of your paper to support your argument or otherwise? Look, Carl, that's a fantastic question. Unfortunately, there's no good answer for this. Look, you need to, you just need to be reasonable about it. You know, if you're asked to write a 1,000-word literal report on something, you're not going to read 30 journal articles. So you just, and the thing is as well, I guess you read until you have a sense of, okay, I've found a few ideas, I found a bit of evidence out there, and then it's enough. So Carl, unfortunately, there's no good answer for your question. And then Hira says, do we have this kind of phrase materials at the Curtin website? So I don't know exactly what you mean, Hira, but there is the Uniskills site. So I'm just going to put that in chat again. So have a look there because there's examples about everything on that page. And so then Babati says, if I gather resources from more than 5 different books and websites and turn them into my own words, so I still have to provide the sources of my information citation, not copying their exact words or paraphrasing. Yes, you do. So basically, if you read 5 journal articles, books, whatever, websites, and you use all those ideas in your writing, you have to reference them all. Look, it depends a bit. If you're just in your writing, if you're just going to say, there's a lot of literature out there on this topic, you might be able to just say, for example, and then you just have 3 out of the 5 because you're not taking any specific ideas from the 5 sources. You're just saying there's a lot out there. But if you're taking concrete ideas from those 5 different places, you need to, and then you paraphrase it. Yes, all 5 need to be in there. Because I, as the reader, needs to understand where your ideas are coming from. I need to go to the source if I would like to. So that's why you have to tell me. And Carl, I'm glad you're saying that. Yes, a good understanding. And look, I mean, that's something that's also very dependent on the assessment, Carl. So if you're really struggling, I would ask your lecturer if they can give you just a sense. You know, are they hoping for 3 sources or 20? No, can they just give you a bit of guidance? That's definitely a question you can ask. Okay, so peoples, let's move on from synthesizing, if that is okay. Because the last thing we need to do, why are my slides not moving, is talk a bit about academic style. So what are those characteristics of academic style? Can you help me with that? So if we say you're all at university now, you need to write in this mysterious way. What would you say, what do you think are the characteristics of that academic style of writing at university? What are the do's and don'ts? You have any ideas? Michelle, that's great. Yes, not writing in the first person. Anything else? No, yeah, I don't know if you're all typing or if you're all sort of waiting for me to say something. Let's have a look what's on my slide. So, Shane, your idea is not original. Give credit. Yes. Samantha, yes. Correct punctuation and grammar. So, everything should be well referenced and impersonal. Yeah, that's a little bit what Michelle said as well, Carl. Thank you. So, look, have a look at what's up there on the slide. So, usually it's reasonably formal. You avoid casual language, so you're not going to say, "Hey, mate, you know, here's some reasons why dogs are awesome." You are meant to use third-person point of view, so that's what you said, Michelle. I put a question mark there because if you're asked to write a reflection, you will write in first person. You will say, you know, I'm reflecting on this thing, and here are my reflections, and I think that blah, blah. So usually it's third person, but sometimes you might write something in first person. Shane says your idea is not, yes, you do need to give credit to other ideas. So I guess in other forms of writing, you don't really have to do that. If you write an email to a friend, or if you, what else would you be writing? If you write a birthday card, you know, you don't need to reference anyone. So you definitely need to reference when you're in academic writing. Samantha, correct punctuation and grammar is important, and so Grammarly does help you with that, so that's what you should use it for. And Carl says everything should be well referenced, exactly, and impersonal. So impersonal is a bit like the whole, you don't just say, well, here's what I think, but you back it up. You say, and there's other people that agree with me, or I have some evidence, I have some data, whatever you base your ideas on, that needs to be there. So I think that's basically most of the things up there on the screen. Let's have a bit of an activity. I'm going to give you 4 or 5 minutes. Have a look at what's up there on the screen, and tell me all the bits you would change in this text to make it more academic. I have, I'm so sorry, I've muted myself, which was a bit silly. So I was talking to you this entire time. Okay, sorry, peoples. You can hear me now. Yes, that's because I unmuted myself. Sorry about that. So look, everything you've said in the chat is completely on point. I love all your comments. They're all completely true. It's not based on facts. It's not objective. It's very informal. There's first person. There is a lot of casual kind of words. There's a lot of words to say very little. What else have you said? There's bias in there, jargon in there. Yes, so sorry that I've left it there for a bit. I didn't realize that I was muted. So look, and yes, Shane, I agree with you that this is a horrible piece of writing, but that's the whole idea, so you can sort of spot those kinds of things that don't work very well. But at the end of the day, if you look at the actual grammar of that piece of text, that's actually not bad at all. So basically, academic style means, you take out all the abbreviations, all the sort of fluffy language, obviously, completely, all those kind of words. You take out the bias, you take out all the statements that don't have no evidence at all. And if you take all that out, the actual grammar and sentence structure is actually really nice. So academic style doesn't mean you have to have huge long sentences. It's actually okay to have quite short sentences and simple grammar because it's easy to read, which is what you really want to write in a way that it's easy to read. So just be mindful with the language and don't make that too simple, but basically don't worry about the sentence structure. Keep that as simple as possible. So I guess that's the takeaway from this exercise. So that was a lot about academic style. The only thing we have left to talk about, so are there any questions about academic style? Or is that sort of all kind of obvious? If you have any questions, type them in the chat. And while you're typing, let's move on to writing critically. So if you do all your paraphrasing, synthesizing, summarizing, occasionally you have direct quotes, you also then need to be critical about all of that. So you need to analyze information, you need to question it, you need to have actual arguments and linking knowledge to different contexts. So what might work in one context is maybe not going to work in a different context. You need to sort of question that. You need to be mindful of your personal bias. If you think that you don't have a personal bias, you do. Everyone does, because we've grown up a certain way. We've had a certain education, upbringing, education. We have a certain language background, cultural background, and all those things inform how we see the world. They're subconscious, most of those things. So, that's why it's a bias, it's a subconscious bias. And so you do need to be mindful of that. Who are you in the world and how do you see the world? What do you believe in? What are your values? And that is going to inform how you see the world. So just be mindful of that, basically. When you're writing, try not to have emotive language. So, there shouldn't be too much emotion. Just try to be as objective as possible when you're writing academically or when you're writing critically. Unless you have to do, say, something like a reflection where you're asked to write about your emotions, then you obviously want to, use emotional language. So, none of those really big words like we had in the example as well. Try some words can be quite loaded. So say if you compare the word riot to the word protest, if you have asylum seeker versus illegal immigrant, both those terms sort of they come with their own whole story and worldview. So you need to be careful about which words you use and why you use them. And be aware of your own bias. I've already sort of covered that. So try to, as much as possible, be critical about the things you write. So everyone, we have a little bit of time left. Are there any questions from any of you? If yes, then please unmute yourselves or put them in the chat. Questions about anything at all that I covered today? Or could even be a question about something I didn't cover that I can quickly answer. I'm just going to give you a moment to think about that. Yes, Miriam, fantastic question. So after the session, I will send you the recording just in case, and you get a copy of the slides. Yes. That's okay. Leslie, yes. I'm going to come to you later, Gerrit. Can we find any exercises for this topic online? Okay. There's lots of questions there. So Leslie, do you want to go first?
Well, I have a question about something besides this topic. It's to do with searching for library material. So I can wait until after if you want me to. It was about guided. It's called Guided Inquiry Design, and there's a book or a couple of books by a certain author, and they're not for online people. So it's called Using Inquiry Tools. I'm looking for something to do with using how to inquiry and the questions that go around inquiry. So that was my question. Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay, Leslie. So let me just I'm trying to manage my cursor here so I can find something for you. So let me just give me a moment to answer Leslie's question, and I'm going to get back to your questions in the chat. And so, Leslie, I assume that you are not in Perth. Is that correct?
I'm in Adelaide. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So I'm going to
inquiry tools. It's Carol Collier Coulthard. She's retired now. But you've got them, but they're not.
They're not online. Yeah. Now, what you can do is I'm going to put a link in the chat there. You can book a consultation with someone if you want to really go into searching and finding resources. If you want just help finding those two books maybe online, because it's possibly that we have them online. If that is the case, then I would say you email the library, and I'm going to put the email into the chat right now, because you can just email those two books to the library and say, can I please confirm that these are not available online? And then the people would either help you find them online or help you find something else that's similar, basically.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's okay. No worries, Leslie. And so the other question, can I go back to slide 1, please? Yes, I can. Just give me a moment. So let me know which slide, though, because I guess the first slide was just this one. Is that the one you mean? It's Garrett. Anyway, let me know. Jennifer says, can we find any exercises for this topic online? Yes. So look, I've said this before, but on Uni Skills, I'm going to put the link into the chat again. There is a lot of material, and there's also links on how to get further help, workshops, all that kind of thing. So then we have how can we remove personal bias? That is a very good question that I don't think I can answer very quickly. Miriam?
Yes.
So let me just quickly there is a fantastic test online, Miriam, and I've just found it. I'm going to put it into the chat. So it's from Harvard University, and it's a fantastic test if you're interested in interested bias and all that. So basically, they have different biases. I think they have racism, gender bias, and maybe ageism, but I'm not sure about that. But they have racism and they have gender bias. And Miriam, if you do the test, it basically tests, like you can test yourself, and you can find out about your own biases. I found it amazing and very insightful. I can share it with you. It turns out I'm not much of a racist, which is lovely, but apparently I have gender bias, which is very surprising because anyone who knows me would know that I'm a complete feminist and 50-50 household, and yet subconsciously I believe that I should be at home right now cooking dinner for my family. So that is a really eye-opening kind of test, Miriam, if you want to have a play with that. But otherwise, I don't think I can answer your entire question right now because it's a huge question. But have a look at that. There's also critical thinking tools on the Uniskills website, Miriam, and you can also have a look there because there's also things about bias, because critical thinking and thinking about bias is sort of the same thing. Thank you, Shane. That's a wonderful piece of feedback. Let me see if there was other questions. Carl says, are the slides? No. I'm going to attach the slides, Carl. So you get a PDF with the slides, basically. Tipu says, are there any editing resources? I'm pretty sure we have editing on Uniskills. Tipu, let me have a quick look. Yes, there's editing and proofreading. So I'm just going to put the link in the chat. There's lots of links there. That's okay. So that's for you, Tipu. The slide before the last question slide. Yes, that makes a lot more sense. Sorry. Let me go back there. If you give me a moment. So the slides before the question slide was this one, I think. So if you, I think that's the slide you wanted to see again, Garrett, so that's okay. So, and then anyone else had any questions? I hope I didn't miss any questions that you had put in the chat there, because there were a lot of questions in the chat. So, but we have a few more minutes if anyone has a question. Sorry, now I've gone too far. So Samantha says, is there a class in Uniskills in regards to how to find evidence and resources to include in assessments? There's definitely, so in Uniskills, there's not a class so much, but there's definitely, there's a whole thing on finding information, Samantha. So I'm going to put the chat to that as well in the link to that as well in the chat. So that's for you, Samantha. Thank you, Zoe. So thank you, Zoe and Shane and everyone who sort of gave me lovely feedback. Note taking is also in Uniskills, Miriam. So look, everyone, the best thing to do with Uniskills is to Google it. So if you put in Curtin Library Uniskills and then whatever you want to do, for example, taking notes, it's going to find the bit in Uniskills that you want to look into. If you can't find the information you're after, then Library Help. Library Help is our email address. People get back to you very, very quickly. And basically, if the person who answers your email doesn't know the answer, they're going to find someone who does. So don't hesitate to email with any question at all you might have about studying or the library, or not just about the things I spoke about today. I'm also going to put a link to our feedback form into the chat. So look, feedback is important, obviously. I haven't been teaching this kind of class for very long, so any feedback, good or bad, would be completely lovely. It doesn't take very long, so I'm going to put the feedback form into the chat now as well. And so please give some feedback. Please ask, get in touch with the library if you have any questions about anything I just said or didn't say. And yeah, if there are no more questions, then thank you everyone for your lovely comments. Thanks for spending an hour and a half with me. And provide some feedback, please. And thank you for all your lovely comments, and good luck with everything. Bye everyone.